The following video is part one of a two-part series with the Chief Commercial Officer of the South African payment solution company, XAGO. Jurgen Kuhnel has a focus on Africa, and XAGO, with its unique exchange gateway, uses the XRP Ledger. You'll really understand the friction and pain points and how they have moved to solve it. Part two of this video introduces the personalized automated trading bots for not only XRP paired to the South African Rand, but also the US dollar, Great British Pound, and the Euro. Enjoy. This is a pretty special interview.
Hey everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo, and I have with me tonight a very special guest. This is Jurgen Kuhnel, and he is the CCO, the Chief Commercial Officer for XAGO Technologies. And we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about tonight. And I think if you're part of the XRP community, you'll really be interested because this is a real OG in the XRP space. Somebody who's been moving money on the XRP ledger for a very long time, but actually doing a whole lot more than that as a business in South Africa, and one that has been working in a sandbox, has a very interesting bot that we're really going to talk about, has an announcement to make, and just really one of the most famous people in South Africa in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because Jurgen was the first person, correct me if I'm wrong, to bring a Bitcoin into South Africa. Is that right?
Gosh, not quite the first person to bring Bitcoin into South Africa. What's happened was really early on, 2011, I think it was. I got interested in Bitcoin because of a payment system that I was building. And it just made a lot of sense, Bitcoin for me at the time. So what happened was somebody pointed me to a meetup, a Bitcoin meetup. So I went to this meetup. There were only 4 people there. It was myself, Andy, Theo, and some other guy. I can never remember his name. And Andy was the real OG. He was like, he knew everything. He was the guy that knew how mining worked, or what is the hash rate. And we were like, what is this stuff? And Theo became my wife's partner in Bitcoin events, and myself. So what I did was I became a BitPay affiliate at the time in order to process Bitcoin payments. And Andy being the OG and having all this mining Bitcoin, we actually processed that first payment for him. So it was really processing the payment into US dollars and then transferring the US dollars back into rands. So it's the first transaction we're aware of, but maybe there was some other guy from another point of the country that had something else going on.
Yeah, that's something though. That's really something. I think for anybody who has been in the space that early, it is, very much a special part of the history already. So I do want everyone to understand a little more about who you are and what your business does. So why don't you go ahead and bring everyone up to speed?
Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. Every time you guys, you specifically mention our name on one of your YouTube videos, we get quite a lot of interest from this. So we were very excited to be on your show. So yeah, absolutely. So I started building a payment system which was based on QR codes and mobile payments, and one of the and the idea was to build a payment system for a retailer. So one of the things that I struggled with at the time was that when you use a Visa or MasterCard payment system as the rail, that adding a QR code to the system seems like a good customer experience, but at the end, what you're doing is you're adding another layer of friction on top of an existing ecosystem. And it didn't really matter in which direction I was skinning this, if we did this, if we did a prepaid card, if we had a cardless payment, it didn't really matter how we approached this. the interchange rates were set by the Reserve Bank. And because those interchange rates are set, how do you compete against an existing ecosystem where cost matters the most? So, for example, if you're talking to a retailer and you've got one payment system in a retail environment versus another payment system, all that matters to them is the bottom line. The cheaper you can get the funds into the bank, the cheaper they can put their products on the shelves, and then they would be the most successful retailer. So adding more friction, adding more costs or layers of cost onto the system just doesn't work. So I kept on butting my head onto this. I couldn't solve it. And along came Bitcoin, and it immediately sort of, to me, it resonated a sense that you could have a new ecosystem that is decentralized in this sense, but that you can do a Bitcoin payment where you do not require the existing interchange rates. You don't require the existing ecosystem and the existing players that are set into the system. So I thought at least by removing that friction, those layers, we would be able to come back and compete within that payment sort of low fee cycle. And so we raised some funds. So we learned a few things. One of the things, for example, that a retailer wouldn't be able to add another hardware device onto their system. They just don't have the ports available. So we needed to use the existing terminals. We needed to use the existing switching software. In this particular case that we used, our POC was a Postilion. And then we needed to prove our concept with a phone without any app on. So that was the kind of challenge. It was easy because when I say it was easy, we knew what we were going to do. So we raised some funds and we proved the concept. But as we embarked on this process, we immediately realized Bitcoin's not going to work. And the reason it wasn't going to work is for three reasons. First, the Bitcoin payment, confirmation on the blockchain is about 10 minutes for one verification. So that unfortunately was a little slow. So you imagine you slow the queue down at a retailer for 10 minutes. I don't think the manager of the store would be that excited. The second thing is the fees started skyrocketing as early as 2016 already. And today we all know a Bitcoin payment is quite expensive, 300-400 Rand for a Bitcoin payment. And the average basket size in our big retailers is 140 Rand. So you cannot pay 300 Rand for 140 Rand average basket size transaction. So it was speed, the fees, and of course, if you had to wait 10 minutes, you had to bring volatility into the equation as well. So now you're sitting with a situation where I want to do a Bitcoin transfer and then turn it into cash. But you can only turn it into cash once the transaction is complete. So you might actually end up with, if you bought something for 140 Rand, you might actually end up with 135 Rand. And those are the kind of risks that retailers are just not interested in. You can skin it however you like, but they're not going to go for that. So right early on, we got onto XRP, and we realized the power of the ledger and how it was working and what we could do with it. And most importantly, that we could issue our own currency on it, and which happened to be the South African rands. Because inevitably a retailer would want to accept rands as their payment. They don't want actually XRP or crypto or Bitcoin or anything like that. They want rands. If they advertised 140 Rand, it's 140 Rand that they would like at the end of their day. And so those are the things that drove us into XRP early. And of course, the 3.8 seconds for settlement, which is within the 15-second delay period for a POS payment. And then, of course, having a rands issued, there's no volatility. And then we could do the integration. So we then went and did an integration with Postilion software, which is the largest point of sale software switch in the world. And we then did a transaction through one of these terminals and showed that we can do a Ripple payment. And that is what we did. So that was our POC in 2016. we then went on and on a mission to raise funds to actually build our system. Now, before I go on to the whole journey, what's important about us is why did we want to do this? So there's bringing the fees down and going into the friction layers and cutting into those fees of the retailers. But inevitably, why XRP? We could do this without a crypto. But the reason why is we also believe that most of these retailers in Africa are in various countries through Africa. So they are in multiple countries. For example, they would be in 15 or 20 countries with 15 or 20 different currencies. So, and one of the big products in South Africa now is sending funds back home. So, people come and they want to send, they come to South Africa to work and then they send the funds back to Zimbabwe, they send it back to Namibia. And unfortunately, those are the people that are getting the raw end of the deal. When they need to send funds back, the average remittance fee at the moment is 9.5%. Now that sounds 9.5%. I don't know if that sounds a lot or little, but it sounds like a lot to me.
A lot.
And yeah, but here's the funny part of it. If I have a lot of money in South Africa, for example, if I have 100,000 Rand and I want to send 100,000 Rand to the US, I'll pay 1.5%. But if I want to send 1,000 Rand to Zimbabwe, I'm going to pay maybe 25%. And this is where the disparity comes in. And people don't always realize why that disparity is there. And people don't always realize, they just think, for example, maybe the banks are out there to eat their lunch. But that's not the case. What's happening is that, for example, there's a big corridor between South Africa and the US. So there's a lot of liquidity in that market, and a lot of people are sending money back and forth. So for the banks to hold US dollars, this is a low risk environment for them. So they are able to deal with dollars pretty efficiently. But when you want to send funds back to the Kenyan shilling, for example, that's a high risk currency. It's a high risk currency to hold, or asset to hold on your books for a bank. It's there's not a liquidity in the market for that. So naturally, a market maker that deals with that is going to ask a premium for that. And so people don't realize that is part of the process of the banks de-risking their asset base around the world. Now, so all these African currencies that are all volatile, just like all these cryptos going up and down like a seesaw. Now what happens is when I need to do a bigger deal of 100,000 Rand and I send 100,000 Rand to the US, that's quite an attractive deal for the bank. But when I need to send 1,000 Rand to Kenya in shillings, that's not attractive at all. And that is why these fees are so high. So what happens is there are a lot of services that are trying to tackle this problem, not all crypto based. And what they do is they bulk up the payments. For example, they would say, okay, fine, for 10%, we'll send your funds back to Kenya, but you're going to have to wait until we have quite a lot of money bulked up so that we can do one large transaction over. And so therefore, the average transaction time is also between 5 and 10 days. So now you can imagine you're a worker, you're working on a construction site in South Africa, and the reason you are here is to send funds back home. You made 1,000. I think the minimum wage is 3,000 Rand. I think it's 3,000 Rand a month. Correct. Don't quote me on that. But it's not a lot. And so now you need to send 1,000 or 2,000 Rand back to Kenya, where you come from, because your family is in need of that money. So not only do you need to pay 10% of that, you also need to wait between 5 and 10 days for the funds to arrive. Now, unfortunately, the people on the other side, they live in hand to mouth. So that 10 days is crucial. And people don't realize how this is a big problem in Africa. So there's a lot of solutions trying to tackle that. So the way we see it is, so now I'm just winding back to why we're doing what we're doing. And so with a retailer footprint right over Africa. So now let's say, for example, I want to send 2,000 Rand from South Africa to Kenya. Now, XAGO has built a mobile-based payment system that is running on the XRP Ledger. So the idea is that you can take your rands, key in your phone number, put this into the till, into your point of sale in South Africa. It loads onto the ledger within 3.8 seconds. You can turn it into Kenyan shillings, and then you can offload it in 3.8 seconds in Kenya at a retailer. So therefore, within a few seconds, you can take the funds out of a corresponding point of sale system in another country, and also then you can do that via your mobile device, and you would also be able to do that with a much lower cost base. And that is the essence of our product. But in order to get there, there's a lot of work to be done, and that is why some days people are confused about the service that we are providing.
Yeah, you have on your website that you're empowering the people of Africa, and now that really does drive the point home for me of what you're doing. Yeah, now it makes sense. Yeah, what a process, what an unbelievable amount of fee that is being charged for people who are geographically quite close, really. And that's horrible. So wonderful, good on you. I'm sure that yeah, I mean, I'm just so happy that you're doing that and providing that service. And of course, I've been a big fan of the Ledger for years, so I'm really happy to see that the Ledger again can provide value to people. Real use case and real value to the pockets. You know, it just doesn't make sense sometimes when I hear people talk badly about the digital asset XRP. If they really heard that kind of story that you just talked about, how can you ever say that again? It's really not a banker's coin. This is a ledger with a native asset that is truly bringing incredible value to people who, like you said, are living hand to mouth and need to pay their families. And this isn't just in Africa. This is in so many places around the world. You know, it's amazing. So it's great.
So I can tell you a good example. Now we also when we launched as a completely decentralized exchange. And so all the currencies was issued on the ledger, and we used the decentralized exchange to do the trading, to trade from rands to XRP. But we actually ran into a lot of problems using the decentralized exchange. And the reason for it is that every trade, and people don't realize this now, but when you do an exchange, every trade is actually 4 entries. There's a trade, there's the trade fee, there's the counter trade and the counter trade fee, and all those fees need to go to the corresponding wallets. So every time you do a trade, you actually do 4 transactions on the Ripple ledger. Then what happens is, if one of those 4 transactions fail for a reason, which we ended up having quite a few problems. So, for example, you do your buy, the buy happens, the fee happens, the sell happens, but the corresponding fee, for example, fails. Then the entire process needs to be reversed, and all those funds need to be, so another 6 transactions need to move the funds back into the corresponding wallets in order to get, and it was just an absolute nightmare. So we actually had Stefan Thomas come to our office one day, and he looked at this and he went, "Not scalable, sorry." And it was a bad moment for us, because we obviously had a lot of respect for him. And so he said we needed to take our trading off the decentralized exchange if we want to scale. So we've done that. That was a big move, a big migration for us, and it's helped a lot, to be honest. So now the actual trading of the assets happens off-chain, but we still issue everything on Ledger, and everything is tracked and traced on Ledger from that side.
Yeah, that's good. You did a workaround and came up with the solution. So tell me about the sandbox, because that's interesting that you have participated in that. I'm curious to know more.
Yeah, so we've been engaging with the South African Reserve Bank for as long as we've been alive as a company. We literally went, I would say, just as we did our POC, we went straight to the Reserve Bank. We said, look, this is what we want to do. And in one of the very first meetings, the head of FinTech said something to me that kind of resonated, which I understood at the time, is what is the role of the South African Reserve Bank in the monetary ecosystem in South Africa? Because everybody thinks they're regulators or they're here to do this and do that. But if you had to look at their primary objective is the stability of the South African rand, because they are the issuer of the South African rand. So anything that could potentially destabilize the South African rand is a threat to them. So this could be money laundering, it could be a political situation, it could be interest rates, it could be whatever it is, unemployment. All those things are reasons that could potentially destabilize the rand, and that effectively is their mandate to make sure that it's nice and stable. So the way the South African Reserve Bank works is the setup is this: you get the South African Reserve Bank as the issuer of the national currency, and then what they've done is they give authorized dealers, the banks, a right to use that currency, to deal with that currency. That's what is called an authorized dealer. And then just below them, you get an authorized dealer with limited exposure, which is the ADLA, and they can then also deal with this currency, but to a limited, with a limited exposure. So they can only deal with it in certain ways. A good example would be a bureau de change at the airport. So they could only deal up to 500,000 Rand, and they could do cash transactions for this. Where as a bank, can make a much larger transaction with much more discretion. So those are the types of levels that you work through. And that is basically how the whole ecosystem works. And then you've got the national payment system that is all being tracked and traced, and hopefully that this whole system is nice and stable. And that is what they've built. So as soon as I'm a South African and I want to deal with a foreign currency, for example, the US dollar, what I'm dealing with is a foreign asset or a foreign currency in this case. So therefore, that could potentially destabilize the South African rand, because every time I sell a rand for a US dollar, the rand would get a bit weaker. So if I sell too many rands, then the rand, we would have a Terra Luna situation happening, or hyperinflation.
We don't want that.
And that happened in Zimbabwe because people just didn't want to deal with a Zimbabwean dollar any longer, and that happened. So their job is to protect the South African currency. And so now suddenly here comes crypto. And crypto is a foreign asset. It's now classified, or will be classified, as a foreign asset. I think it will be classified as a foreign asset. And in that lies the word. It's foreign. It's foreign to the South African rand. So it's foreign to the South African Reserve Bank. It's a very important concept, because this is what people don't understand. This is why when exchange control regulations have been put in, and those have been put in order to stabilize our currency, because too many people were sending funds out of South Africa as quick as they could. So it was destabilizing the currency, and they put in exchange control. So all these factors are being brought in and said, how does crypto affect this? Because what you are now dealing with, if I had to take a simple example, how does the reporting work? And this is what we've been doing with the IFWG, by the way, is how to report on these crypto assets. Where does the reporting sit? At what point of the journey do they want to see a reportable transaction and a non-reportable transaction, an externalization event, and what is happening? And all those things is what we've been testing with them. And I must say, the experience have been amazing. They have been unbelievable towards us. But back to the point is, when I do a US dollar transaction today, I want to send 100,000 Rand from my personal account to a US dollar account, my personal US dollar account in the US. So what would happen is I would send my funds to my bank, or it would be in my bank, and they would turn those rands, they would buy dollars on the open market. Okay, so that is the reportable transaction, is when I turn the rands into dollars. Then what happens is it's placed into what is called a CFC account, which is a foreign investment account. But the funds can only reside there for about 30 days. After that, it either has to be turned back into rands or it has to be externalized, it has to be sent to the corresponding bank in the US. Because South Africans, as a South African, are not allowed to deal with dollars. So I can't hold dollars in a South African bank, but I can hold dollars in a foreign bank. Because South African banks are not authorized to deal with dollars, they're authorized to deal with rands. And so now what happens is, so the reportable transaction sits when I am turning my funds into US dollars, and the non-reportable transaction is the externalization event when those dollars are sent. And this is exactly the same with crypto. And this is what a lot of people miss. The reportable transaction is when I turn my rands into this foreign asset called crypto. And the externalization event is when I send that crypto off this exchange to another exchange, whether this exchange now residing in the UK or the US. And it's at those steps that XAGO has actually put those reporting things into place and been testing it, we believe, quite successfully with the Reserve Bank. And we've built those systems in now. Now, what makes us quite a lot different from a normal exchange like, let's call it Bitstamp, how would Bitstamp work? When I deposit $100 into Bitstamp, what happens is Bitstamp gives me a credit and they say, this is great. We've seen your $100. You've got 100 Bitstamp dollars credit. Go to our marketplace and go wild. Do what you like to do. So the reportable transaction in Bitstamp's case would happen only the moment that they buy a Bitcoin or an XRP. So the reportable transaction is happening on the trade level. And then the non-reportable side would happen when I send that XRP off Bitstamp to Kraken, for example. Now, what makes XAGO different is when you deposit funds into XAGO, we issue those rands onto the ledger. So the reportable transaction happens at that point, one-to-one. And the non-reportable transaction is then when you send those funds out. So either you send those funds out by turning it into XRP and sending the XRP out, or turning it into US dollars, sending US dollars, or whatever you want to do. But the purpose is that the reportable transaction is on the deposit and the withdrawal already. We feel that the regulators like that approach because it's very easy, and the reporting is now simple because you can see the funds going in and out, and this is just the way we work. So, yeah, those are the things that we've been working with the Reserve Bank, and of course, then to make matters even a little bit more complicated, is not only do they want to see the reporting and the non-reportable side of things, they also want to see the source and destination of each external transaction. And those are things that are making things, I don't even know how some of the crypto exchanges are going to deal with this. Because you need to know where the funds are coming from, the ID number, the name, surname, whatever of the person that are sending those funds, and it has to come from the originator. So it's going to be very difficult to implement the travel rule that's coming in. And that is going to be the FATF guidelines coming from America, and it's going to sweep across the world. And our regulators have already told us that they are going to abide by that. So those are all the reasons why XAGO has struggled in the past to connect to DeFi exchanges. Because when you do a DeFi transaction, you move your rands into XRP and your XRP into a DeFi exchange. But it's not possible to know who the other side of the DeFi transaction is. And because of that, it makes it almost impossible to abide by a travel rule regulation that's coming. So yeah, those are just things that worry us when we work. Those are things we're working on.
But that's got to be though a concern and a challenge and a hoop to jump through for a lot of different countries, and it's probably only going to get, those hoops are going to get more, and the hurdles will get higher, and I think the reporting will become even more strict and probably more in depth. Yeah, that's just the way I think this space is going. It's fascinating though to hear from your side how the central bank is working with you. And I think you're probably also very much an asset for them to learn about this space too.
Please find the link in the description of this video to part 2, the automated trading bot.